Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Harness Players Podcast ahead of the opening preliminary for the MGM Borgata Series over at MGM Yonkers Raceway. That starts on Monday, March the 30th. You'll also be able to find a preview episode where myself and Michael Probozzi, Mikey P as he's also known, go over and handicap, analyze the first preliminary of that series. There are 5 divisions total happening at Yonkers on Monday. But this episode is an accompanying episode where we get to talk to some of the major players inside of the series. Ahead, you'll see interviews that I did with driver Jim Marohn Jr., who steers defending champion Mossdale Ben. Jason Bartlett, Yonkers Raceway's leading driver. He also has drives in 4 of the 5 divisions in the opening preliminary. And we also have an interview with Doug Dilloian, who trains a pair of horses, not to be confused with Per Engblom, who trains many horses racing on Monday. Doug Dilloian has 2. We're going to talk to him about his chances and his thoughts on this unique series. There's absolutely no other race on the Grand Circuit like the MGM Borgata, and even its debutante its debutante companion race, the Ursula McIntyre, formerly the Blue Chip Matchmaker. But anyway, hope you enjoy this special episode of the Harness Players Podcast. Do check out the other episode, and if you're looking for handicapping thoughts, where we analyze these races more in depth. But if you want to get to know some of the horses, the people behind the horses, how they approach it, I think it's real useful to implement into handicapping, because a lot of this stuff that happens on the track is a lot more than just numbers. It's people and breathing things with thoughts and strategies and approaches, philosophies. All of that interwebs into what we see in these numbers on the past performances. So hope you get some use out of it. Hope you enjoy it. And maybe we'll do more of these in the future, because it was only somewhat hard to put together, but not that hard. It was a little bit of work, which is more than no work, which is what I think most video podcasts are trying to aim for these days. But that's it. Enjoy the episode. That's the end of this open. I need to stop talking. First up, we're going to go to Jim Marohn Jr. First up here on the show, happy to welcome one of the many drivers competing in the upcoming MGM Borgata Series over at MGM Yonkers Raceway, also just Yonkers Raceway. Might just be Yonkers Raceway.
Yeah.
Who knows? But Jim Marohn Jr., a name that I think, at least over the winter, more people have grown familiar with at Yonkers, but you ain't no young bloke, unfortunately. I mean, I remember 10 years ago even, we were having conversations about Meadowland's leading driver, Jim Marohn Jr.
Yeah.
And now,
that was a minute ago. Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, you've had opportunities in this series. I was actually looking back, going back to like 2018, 2019, you'd pick up a couple drives when it was the then Levy series. But this is your first foray since 2021, when you and Mike Dieters teamed up with He's a Kingslayer. So I guess first and foremost, just talk about how it feels to come back to the big stage like this, especially in what seems like a Marohn-essence.
It's it feels really good to be back in the series. It's it's an honor that people with these high class horses trust you to race them for the next 6 weeks, to go for really good money. And right now there's not many stake races going on at this. The Levy's kind of like the kickoff to the stake races in our business. So all eyes are going to be on it, and I can't wait to be in it.
Well, and I mean, your name, aside from all those years ago, you were a top driver at the now late Freehold Raceway. You're currently at the top of the standing. Well, not the top, but I'm pretty sure you're in the top rankings of the standings over at Yonkers. And not every day, even when you are kind of on a good roll, do you pick up a drive like defending Borgata champ Mossdale Ben. Talk about how you were able to get that drive and team up with Peter Tritton.
I've driven, I've driven for Peter Tritton maybe a long time ago, but Not really recently, and it was just it's just been kind of one of those things where I've kind of inherited some of his drives. Jordan Stratton was mostly his main driver for a very long time, and his brothers, picked up a big stable right now, and Jordan is he's really committing to his brother's barn, and Pete is a guy that likes to use just primarily about one guy on his horses. He wants one guy familiar with his horses and that he's familiar with, and it's been working very well for that.
In the few times that you've driven Mossdale Ben, I think it's at least a handful, maybe a handful and one.
Hmm.
Uh, what have you gotten to learn about him? Because obviously last season we saw he's a horse that could take a lot of air. He loves to do work. Is that the same sense you get from him when you sit behind?
Yeah, it is. He's a horse that can really race either way. I know primarily he's been raced off the pace, but he really has no problem with making some early speed and getting involved early. Uh, but he is a horse that he can live on the outside, and he can turn a lot of speed the last quarter, and he can keep that momentum going. That really makes a difference between regular horses and horses like him.
Well, how does it feel for your sake too? Because again, this is your first Borgata appearance in quite some time. I feel like to get a horse like Mossdale Ben, who has that versatility, do you feel like it makes your job easier, or are you still recognizing I'm against the top guys? I'm not going to make it feel that easy.
I'd say both because horses that are in this series, they probably make us drivers jobs easier because they're capable of doing a lot more than regular overnight horses. But still, when you're in a series like this, you're going against the best of the best of the drivers, the best of the trainers. So that's not easy. You're no one's a layover in this series.
And I guess another thing, since we're coming up towards leg one, Mossdale Ben, he's raced, is it one or two times this year already?
I believe he's raced
One.
4 or 5 times this year. He's you know he didn't start off the year that great with some outside posts and then some cancellations, but Pete's been able to keep him on his training, and we got back in. We got to race the past 2 weeks, and he raced very well. So we were happy with that.
And I think it's kind of a tricky thing for you to answer because, just from a handicapping point of view, the main thing we're trying to figure out is, does he feel like the Mossdale Ben that he was last season? Obviously, you weren't behind him. You only got to see him since Jordan was driving. But I mean, can you make any type of assessment or maybe just overall, if you feel like he's coming into the race as sharp as you can imagine?
From I didn't drive him at all, last year when he was good. Only from what I could seen of him, from my assessment is I think he's about 90%. Uh, like I said, he's hasn't had as many starts yet as some of the other horses, and so I think he's still coming into himself. But I do think he is starting this series off on a good foot.
And obviously being a 5 week series, six including the finals, there's plenty of time for him to get the gears cranking. Since you're driving for Tritton, you're also going to have another one in Sherlock, a horse that, at least on this podcast, I was a big fan of last season, because anytime there was a 3 to 5 shot who seemed like a lock and Sherlock was inside of the race, I knew I could probably make the exacta or the trifecta pay a little something. Talking about him, you've probably driven him a few times at this point. What sense have you got of him?
He's he's a horse that gets around that track very well. He's more of a stalker, and he can go. He can pretty much follow any type of speed that they go, and he's just got some grit into him that he's going to go out and beat who's ever in front of him if he's got a clear shot at him. And I think that's why that Sherlock always, if he's in position, odds don't matter to him.
It seems like a type that you might be more likely to try and stick to the cones, see what you can pick up with. But, if the race starts falling apart a certain way, I can imagine you aren't afraid to try and tip him out either.
100%. He's got a big set of lungs in him. If the fractions get crazy in a race and he's in contention, I hope you have him on your ticket.
Well, for sure, because it seems like he never gets bet ever. No one likes this horse in the betting for whatever
Yeah.
reason. I mean, it's a win bet at the very least, and he's
Mhm.
usually a runner-up, third place type. But Jim, thank you for taking the time to talk here, and hopefully this is the first of many stakes engagements for you, because I know for a long time this has been something that you've had your eyes on, and again, it must just feel really nice to have an opportunity like this coming up in the Borgata.
Oh, of course. Like I said, it's right now in our game, all eyes are going to be on this series for the next 6 weeks. It's great.
And all eyes will be also on Jim Marohn Jr., one of Yonkers Raceway's leading drivers. Thank you, Jim, for talking to me, and best of luck to you in the series.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Anytime.
Next on the show, we got one of the thirstiest drivers I've yet to talk to so far in this Borgata preview series, but he was a hard worker last year. Jason, would you say that last year was the most work you put in? Because, I mean, you got the Driver of the Year title after all.
But yeah, the success along with the hard work, all paid off in the end. So I was very happy with the whole year as a whole, and got some to drive some really nice horses. So, as a kid, as you grow up, that's what you dream about. And last year hopefully started, the Grand Circuit phase of my career.
And well, and perennially, you've been the leading driver at Yonkers Raceway pretty much since before I had facial hair, and that's going on like 20 years. It came in pretty early, but no one needed to know that. Yet, when you're at that level and competing with the best guys week in, week out, even though you're on a little circuit like Yonkers and the New York Sire Stakes and stuff, do you feel more confident now after you've gone on to the Grand Circuit, you've gotten your first Breeders' Crown wins, or is it a situation where you're just happy to take the opportunities and keep on riding?
Yeah, I mean, when you win races, you get more confident, and then, I think on the racetrack, as confident as you can be, you can put yourself in the best positions, and driving against them guys, you're always willing to learn and watch other guys, and I'm always critiquing myself every race, every day. So, I'm hungry to get better, hungry to win some races, and just thankful for the opportunities everybody's given me.
I guess, now heading into this series off of a year like that too, is there any type of like really big lesson you were able to take off of your foray into the Grand Circuit like that you're going to try and carry over into this year?
Not really. Just being available, I think is the main thing, and working hard, and wherever these guys ask you to go, whether it's training babies, going to qualifiers all the time, just being available, and not saying no, because you might miss those opportunities.
And you've got several drives in on this first leg of this long series. Before we get to those horses, though, do you have a specific approach when it comes to these preliminaries? Because obviously, there's a lot of opportunities to get points. Sometimes you got a really good horse that might get a bad draw, and a lot of times that horse's name is Coach's Corner. But besides that, besides that, do you try to approach every one of these prelims the same way, or since it's a long series, does that play into your strategy at all?
I think I play race by race, week by week. Um, see where the horse is, qualifying, or how it's been racing previously, and knowing the other horses, knowing the track, and also, like you said, it's a long series. The horses got to survive 6 weeks, and you don't want them peaking at the wrong time. So you want them peaking at the right time, and that's going into the finals. So, horse by horse, a lot of these horses have been qualified. Some of them that we're racing against hasn't been. They've raced a couple races, so you got to take all that stuff into effect, and know that the horses that are just qualified are going to get better. So, but you can also hurt them right off the bat, doing something stupid.
Well, I believe the first drive you have on Monday fits into that just fresh off the qualifier camp. Soho Firestone for Doug Dilloian. I'm going to have a chance to talk to him tomorrow. It'll be later in this segment. Tell us what you know about Soho Firestone in that first one.
I raced him a bunch when Dougie first got him last year. Then had to pick up because of probably coach's corner or something. But really nice horse, qualified really well. The track was fast that night, but the horse went 51 and 3, I believe it was, and he did that really, really easy. And for him having the rail with his speed, he's not getting away worse than second. I don't believe in that race.
And then you have the pylon post in the next one. Of course, you are a first call guy for Per Engblom. This one, I believe, a new acquisition for him in Redwood, Hanover. I remember he was with Tony Beaton
Yep.
before. Qualified now. I see a 50-3 qualifier. I imagine you're probably happy with how he's coming in.
Yeah, you got two qualifiers under him, a nice easy trip the first week, and then last week, this horse has had a track record of being a great horse, but always had soundness issues. So, Perry got him. He did have those soundness issues, but has gotten better and better since he's been in Per's care. And last week, at that 50 qualifier, I mean, he was well in hand in the wire. So, and he's got really good speed, tactical speed, just a real professional. He can leave 26 and go 30 seconds the next quarter. So, just a real handy horse, and Yonkers fits him to a T. So, just a nice horse in a good spot.
In your experience driving the gate, since you have pylon post and back-to-back races, where do you think it's harder to leave from the gate with the speed horse? Post 1 or post 8?
Um, I mean, with a speed horse like him, I never really worried about what post I have because usually he's a lot quicker than most. But you know, I love leaving from the 8 holes. You can get a little jump on them if you can time it right. If you don't have a lot of horses leaving under you, post one with a speed horse that's really quick out of the gate. He deters a lot of people because he's out in front so quick. He'll deter a lot of people from leaving into him. So, he's real quick. First 3 4 steps, he's real fast. So, I like my chances with him.
That's just something we're always trying to figure out when reading the form. It's because we know you build more momentum from that outside post, so sometimes
Yeah.
it feels easier. But it's always interesting what every driver thinks of every different spot they can work off of the track. You had to make a choice in the third division though between Hunting the Last Dollar. End of story. It's not going to be breaking news when this premieres, but you go with Hunting the Last Dollar. I guess before you talk about him, just from a handicapping perspective, we put a lot of weight in the decisions you guys have to make when you're double listed, triple listed. But just from your perspective, like what does Jason Bartlett look for when he's choosing? Because I know it's not easy.
Try to win the race first of all, and then you have your loyalties of different people that you drive for every week, and who has a lot of times like who you have success with, and Para has like 4 or 5 horses in this series. So going into the series, I knew I was pretty much taking his throughout the series, no matter what holes they drew.
But yeah, I mean, he was part of your career season last year too, as well, along with
Yeah,
Marcus
yeah, for
Melander, who helped
sure.
you get that Breeders' Crown. But with Hunting the Last Dollar, I mean, he was a really nice horse. Talking of speedy off the gate, he could definitely blast out of
Yeah.
there, and I have to imagine that's probably going to be his strongest asset through the series.
Yeah, we didn't qualify him twice. His first qualifier was so good that we skipped a week with him off the next qualifier the next week. That weekend there was a tough qualifier because the wind was really in our face in the stretch, and I think Coach only went like 55 that day, and Hunting went in 52, pretty easy. So we decided to give him a week, knowing that the series is coming right up, and not knowing if he's going to be able to take a week off. So he got the luxury of staying out last week, but he was very sharp again in that qualifier.
Well, obviously, with the qualifiers, every horse is their own individual thing. But you, as the driver, sometimes if you see a horse only have one qualifier versus two coming in, does that change how aggressive you try to approach the race?
Yeah, especially if you get to sit behind them, if they only had one or if they had two. So, I know that going into this race, even though he's got one qualifier, he's ready to go. Obviously, I still again don't want to do something stupid because it is his first start. So, we're gonna try to get him in the best spot, his best spot that we think we can win the race.
No drive in the fourth division, but that's okay with you, right? You don't have to be in every single division, right?
I'd like to be, that's for sure.
That's true. The money is good enough. You'd be willing to not take a break if it meant just going back out on the track one more
Absolutely,
time.
absolutely.
Well, you get to miss the Mossdale Ben race, so that you get to go and sit and watch that one instead. What are your thoughts about him? Because I mean, obviously, defending champion. It's always interesting the driver's perspective of horses that they're trying to beat in some way, and so I'm curious what you think of him.
Yeah, I mean, defending champs, so you're, always a contender. But He's been around and just a nice horseman Jordan drove. I know he was a little bit steppy at times last year. I didn't see that at the end of last year. I know he was kind of a roller coaster ride. He'd be good, and then he wasn't so good. But Pete Tritton's a great horseman, and I'm sure that he's got him coming into the series in the right direction. So always going to worry about that horse because he can race on and off the pace as we've all seen.
And another horse who I thought has just been brilliant in spite of everything that seems to be working against him. Your last drive in the series on Monday, Coach's Corner. Does anyone understand why this horse can never get a good draw?
It's amazing because he just never ever draws good, the poor guy. Um, but you know what? If I'm going to draw bad, I'm glad I'm drawing bad in the first leg. So we're not going to be too far out of it. Again, that's going to be an audible at the gate to see who's leaving, who's not, and go from there. Again, I don't want to get into a speed duel his first start. So we're gonna have to kind of read the gate with him. But he qualified, super both times. I was very, very happy with him. And just a horse that shows up every week. It doesn't matter what post he's got. He doesn't know. And just a good horse.
Well, from the sounds of that, then it also sounds like you're maybe looking forward more towards the later weeks of the series with him, or maybe just when the post finally works out to maybe take a stronger shot.
If he had a race under him, I would say I'm definitely going forward. But again, I'm not sure I haven't really studied it too well to look at it. I know the one horse he can lead pretty good. He's a new import. I qualified against him last week, so he went a nice qualifier too. But I think there was some speed in between. So when the gate falls, I'll make that decision. That's what makes him such a great horse is that I don't have to really go in with no game plan.
Well, and even if you were alluding to maybe being more conservative, you could still surprise all the other drivers because you got that type of horse where if he's just feeling up to it, that can change all their strategies as
Well,
well.
when he 2 years ago in the Levy, when we thought he was over his head against these horses, that's what he did. I mean, I took him back every single week, and he just closed. He was always kicking home 26. So, he's a good horse. He doesn't matter. He loves to pass horses also. So, I think he's won most of his races on the front, and I've always liked him better from off the pace.
Yeah, just sometimes I'm remembering, I think International Trot Day is an example. You could even have just like that perfect pocket trip and something just doesn't open in time.
Yeah, it doesn't. But he got his at the end of the year, where the mile and a quarter set up for him, and he was able to bang that out, ending the year last year, you know which I was very happy for him and the owners and pair because he finally got that signature win that he should have gotten.
Well, in this Borgata series, obviously, kickstarts the whole Grand Circuit season. Just to close out here, obviously, you got your breeders' crowns. You were taking opportunities last season. 2026, where is Bartlett eyeing exactly? You trying to just improve off of what you did last year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to last year. I'm not going to give up my New York stuff. I love doing the New York Sire Stakes. I get to come home at night too, which is a good thing. And also, but I think there'd be a lot more traveling to Kentucky. Probably is going to be more so this year than I did last year. I got out of it a little bit here and there, but hopefully, people are asking me to go out, and I'll hop on a plane and go out probably a little bit more this year.
Well, maybe that also means we'll see you at Oak Grove for
Yeah,
the
that's right.
4-year-old.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that's in the works actually.
Oh, okay. And that's interesting too, because the Borgata, I think there's like a slight overlap
Yeah,
between the 4-year-old start and the Borgata, but
I think
that's a
one
headache you can
division.
deal with later.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna take week by week, and we're starting to get busy again, and the qualifiers are everywhere. So yeah, it's starting.
All right. Well, we got 6 long weeks ahead of us here for the Borgata. You have a lot of drives. I don't know how you keep them all straight and remember all the different horses, everything you got to do with each and one of them. But that's why
That's
you're
my
Jason
job.
Bartlett. It's your job. That's why you're the top of the Yonkers Raceway driver standings. Again, I'm telling you, it's been like 20 years. I don't know that there's been a time. Am I wrong that you've been the leading driver there for like 20 years?
I don't even know how many times I've done it. It never gets old. Yonkers has been so good to me when I first came down, and I enjoy going there. It's a good schedule for me because it's 5 days a week and it's close to home, and we race for the best money in the country. So no complaints from me about Yonkers.
The Crown Prince of Yonkers,
Yeah.
Jason Bartlett, everybody. Thank you so much, Jason, for taking some time
Thank
to
you
talk to
very
us.
much.
And next here on the Harness Players Podcast, this special preview episode ahead of Prelim 1 for the MGM Borgata Series taking place Monday at Yonkers Raceway. I'm not saying all of this as a reminder to all of you. It's mostly to remind Doug, you got to be at Yonkers on Monday for your 2 horses that you have competing inside of those 5 divisions. But before that, how are you feeling ahead of the series?
I'm feeling quite good, to be honest with you. The 2 horses that I have in there, Soho Firestone's probably the best bet for me to make the final. And End of Story is kind of a wild card type of horse. Had a good 4-year-old year and battled some soreness and things of that sort, and he's come back really good at 5. So I'm excited.
And your name on the Grand Circuit, maybe not one that many are familiar with, but people who bet the Meadowlands week in, week out, Yonkers too, they know that you're kind of a mainstay here on the Northeast Seaboard, even at Harrah's Philadelphia. You pop in all over the place. But what does this series mean to a guy like you then, who for the most part, you just kind of race these week in, week out, warrior type horses, but now you have a chance to go for a big graded prize?
Yeah, I mean it's an honor. I mean, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've had some participants, but they nothing of the caliber to make the final. So this year here, I'm a loyal Yonkers guy, local New Jersey guy. So grew up racing, at Freehold Yonkers and the Meadowlands. So when it's in your backyard and to compete for those kind of purses, it means the world to us. And I feel like this year is probably our best shot with the stock that we have.
And before we get into both of these horses specifically, I noticed with both of your horses coming in, sometimes a trainer will want to try and get 2 qualifiers in on a horse to get them ready to go. Is it more your style to go for one, or is it an instance where you have these 2 horses where you didn't feel like a second one was really necessary to prime them?
Yeah, so it's kind of 50-50. I mean, anybody that knows me knows that usually our horses are ready to win off a layoff. I take, a lot of pride in if I give a horse 30 days off, it's usually 8 to 10 weeks back. And we're at Gateway Farm, so, you can really get a horse fit there. But also, ideally, I would have liked to have had one start. This winter, as most people know on the East Coast, has been extremely difficult. And there was many Saturdays when I wanted to go, real speeds that I had to kind of back off because I didn't want to put the horse in jeopardy of injuring any of them really. So it's kind of a mix. I would have liked to have gotten a qualifier in a start, but with the way Firestone and Story qualified with the plugs in wrapped up, I think it's pretty evident that they're ready to go.
Well, and let's start with Firestone. You've already sounded quite high on this one. It's safe to say, from what you've already said, that you feel like this is probably the best horse you've ever put into the series?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. Yeah. I had a horse years ago by the name of I'm a Rock and Roll Legend that, had his type of speed, but didn't have his type of class. And he made the consolation and drew the 8-hole in the consolation. But, yeah, pound for pound, Soho Firestone is definitely my best horse going into the series, and that's not to take anything away from End of Story. Like I said, he's a bit of a wild card, that horse.
And Soho Firestone specifically raced real well in that new Grand Prix series that Yonkers has introduced over the last few years. Do you feel any pressure though when you see the program open up and you're sending the 4-5 morning line favorite in the first race of this whole series?
No, not at all. I mean, I have nothing but confidence, especially with Jason Bartlett. I think I looked the other day, him and I together are winning it, I think around 42 or 43% together. So that takes about 80% of the load off. And then just getting these horses through the week healthy and with the weather changes and making sure that, we don't mess them up that way. There's no pressure at all. I mean, for what we gave for that horse and what he's done to overachieve, we're just there to have some fun, you know.
And obviously he has speed to use from that pylon post. I kind of talked to Jason Bartlett about this, but from your vantage point, when you have a horse with gate speed at a track like Yonkers, do you sometimes feel like the one hole is not the place you want to be, or because it's that quick move to the first turn, everything kind of equalizes in some way?
Yeah, I mean, if you could give me the rail every week, I'll take the rail.
Okay.
Even with the staggered start and gate, especially on a short track. You know, I think the 2 hole's the trickiest spot, you know, because the 1 can push off hard. And if the 3, 4, and 5 have an angle, it's a little bit easier to cross over. I always found the 2 hole's probably the toughest spot to lead from, aside from the 7 or 8. But yeah, I'd sign up for the rail every week if you wanted to give it to me.
Obviously, real easy to see why Soho Firestone is the favorite, one of the horses to beat in that first division. But I think more curiously, from your vantage point, what I'm wondering is around the track, what's Doug Dilloian watching for, hoping for out of that first start for Soho Firestone?
I mean, just to get through healthy and to pull up good. Jason will do the rest. I mean, I think he caught a little bit of a cheaper division, which I'm thankful for. You know, the verdict is out on a horse like him. You know, the class of Captain Albano and those top free-for-all types. I mean, I think he can go with anybody in the country, but, you know, when it's crunch time, can he beat those type of horses? I'm uncertain. But I have nothing but confidence in our program and, you know, in our horses. And like I said before, having Jason steering the horses is a huge edge, you know. So what I'm watching for is just to make sure, you know, everything goes according to plan. He's a pretty versatile horse. I actually think he's better off a helmet with a target, but, you know, he's won on the front, he's won out of the 2 hole, he's won first over, and he's won from the back. But in those types of series against those types of horses, you're going to have to get away close.
I've always felt when you have those types of handy, versatile, just iron horses, it's almost harder to talk about them because they really can do anything. So you're in the position of really just hoping that you get the win, you get the second. It doesn't really matter how he does it, is how I take it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and points are everything. So if you can get out to an early start, you know, God forbid he has to run into a Captain Albano or one of those, or if he draws, you know, bad a couple starts, you know, I mean, the main objective is to make the final and you know, to represent ourselves in a good way. So, you know, if we can get through the first leg and by the grace of God, you know, win it, then we worry about next week. But it's such a long series, and, you know, anybody who has any sort of game plan, you know, it's week to week, and you're trying to get all you can get to accumulate points.
And before we get to end of story and the competition he's in, I feel like that's a strategy that might play into your hands somewhat, not over priming your horses for start number 1, getting them ready enough to race and race well. But since it is a 6-week series, assuming you make the final or consolation, do you think that the way you prep your horses might actually help you stay fresher for longer?
I think it wouldn't matter either way. You know, like I said, I train my horses back, whether it's a 20 claimer or an open pacer. I'm of the opinion I don't believe in racing horses and sitting them in and racing themselves back into shape. I want to do all that work at the farm, and, you know, when I hand the lines over to, you know, Jason or anybody that qualifies the horse, I'm pretty confident that they're gonna, you know, put in a sharp mile in the qualifier, and that you could rely on them first start off the bench. But, you know, again, prior to the qualifier, they've already been a race mile at a Gateway Farm, and they've had 8 to 10 weeks of training, and with only a 30-day break. So, you know, we spend a lot more time really fine tuning them and getting them fit. So, you know, they look good, you know, out of the gate. And not only that, it's more of an expense thing too, right? I mean, to drive up, pay tolls, shipping, paddocking, and then sit them in for 3 starts. And you can ask anybody. I want to win qualifiers. I don't want to sit horses in and finish 5th or 6th. So I'd rather do all the work at home and know that when I bring the product to the racetrack that they're ready to roll.
These are the kinds of questions I especially like to ask because you don't see any of this on the page. There's just so much other room for imagination and things that you're trying to insert potential answers for. So I think it's always great, guys like you willing to talk about this stuff and even talk just like in some ways to simplify it, because I think sometimes we in the handicapping and it's not that we give you guys too much credit, but sometimes I think we overthink what you guys are doing.
Right. No, I think we need more of this in the business, to be very honest with you. I think it's good for the betting public. It's good for people interested. I mean, still to this day, like if I'm on my way to Yonkers, I'll listen to, Ron Burke's Hall of Fame speech, or Jimmy Takter, or, I'm invested in the business. I like learning from people, even, at this stage. So I think the more interaction, it's better for the product.
Perhaps apropos then to segue to end of story to wrap this segment. You kept alluding to horses like Captain Albano and these other classy types. I believe he's drawn in with them in that third division. Safe to say from how you've been talking about, the other horses in the series and stuff, you think that your other one, End of Story, is probably in deeper waters?
I would say so. I think the verdict is still out. I mean, he's a bit of a funny horse. We bought him. A guy had sent him to me at 3 for the New Jersey Sire Stakes, and he immediately, raced really well. He won 2 legs, and then he was 4th in the final, first over in 49. And on my way home, my buddy goes, why don't we buy this horse? And so we made him an offer and ended up buying him. And he was always a really awkward horse. He had real long legs and a short body, and he kind of never looked like his body fit his legs. And so he went through the whole 4-year-old year and never had any major issues, but he had a little bit of, muscle soreness, and he was still growing, and he got driven hard, quite a bit. But he won in 48 at Pocono. He won multiple times in 51 at Yonkers. He's pound for pound probably as fast or faster than Firestone. But I think, again, does Firestone have a little bit more class edge and a little bit handier? Probably. I mean, they both have gate speed. So the reason I put him in the series is because with the way that he came back at 5 this year, he's fully developed. He's matured. That soreness issue has gone away. And actually, when Jason qualified him the other night, we used to hook him in the 2 from the back on the bike, and now he's all the way in the 5 hole. So, he couldn't believe how much he's blossomed and grown up. And, if he kind of develops into the horse that I think he is, then he could surprise a lot of people. I mean, he's chased Desperate Man and some top horses, in his life and raced well against them. So I'm excited about that horse, just in the progress that I've seen from 4 to 5. And like I said, he's as fast as anybody. The tactics are probably a little bit different this week. He's in with Hunt in the Last Dollar, and it's a short field. So, I think Soho Firestone is going to be probably guns blazing, and then the story's going to be probably off the gate and trying to pass horses in a stretch, if I had a guess,
Well, and that development thing you're talking about too, do you feel like when a horse is more gangly like that, it's tougher for them to navigate the smaller tracks versus where he's at now?
Yeah, I think the smaller track was never really an issue for him. He doesn't wear knee boots. He's a really clean going horse. I think it's more of a development issue as far as when they're growing through that 4-year-old year. And some horses don't, but in his case, when his body's trying to catch up with his legs, and then used up all your pari-mutuel wins. So now you have a 4-year-old going against open type horses, and it's always that transition year that's very difficult. But I think once his whole body kind of settled down and now it all fits together, the small little aches and pains have gone away, and he can, further become a better horse because of it.
Do you see him as one where maybe with a couple more starts, we'll see stronger efforts from him compared to a horse like Soho Firestone?
I think so. I mean, like I said, he's won the Open a couple of times out of the 7-hole in 51. I mean, he's got the speed to pace 50 there. It's more of a class issue, and that's to be determined. We raced him last year, and like I said, he kept good company. But a lot of times, because he's so quick that he got down to 3/4 many times at Yonkers and 122 or 120 at Pocono, and horses, especially being 4, when they're overdriven like that a lot, it's hard on them. So if he gets managed properly, I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all to see him jump up and win a race at Yonkers and 150 in a piece. But again, a horse like Captain Albano could go a mile and 59. If I sit on his back, he's going to beat me every time because he's a world champion. So, both my horses, not taking any credit away from them, they lack that probably free-for-all world champion type class, but it's a half mile. Post position means everything, so it kind of equals the playing field a bit. And I think it's wide open for sure.
Well, I should correct myself on this last note. There's no way that you drew in with Captain Albano, because since Bartlett chose off, you pick up Todd McCarthy. Obviously, Todd would probably drive Captain Albano here, but, you don't get Jason, who qualified him. Obviously, the choices are always tough in this game, but I feel like you also get hands for a horse. Like, it sounds like Todd McCarthy's probably a really good match for this horse, too.
It's funny. He actually, when I raced him in the Sire Stake, the first 2 legs, he won with him both times. So I think he paid $70 or $80 the first start, and then he came back and he won from the rail. And then going into the final, he had one of Pelling's that he had to go with, and Dexter ended up driving him. So he actually knows the horse very well, and he's a very easy horse to drive. You can kind of do whatever you like with him, and but pound for pound, he's got one of the biggest hearts, that probably of any horse that I've had. I mean, he tries 110% every week.
And I just to close things out here, with this being such a long series, in some ways you don't want to overcomplicate the process, because there's still the same races as, going into the Open or going into a non-winners of whatever. There's just a mental pressure, I think, sometimes that gets applied because of the stakes, almost literally. But for you, what's your approach to these 6 weeks and overseeing these horses, making sure that you're getting the best out of them?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's a 15 claimer or a Borgata horse, I mean, my OCD's pretty much, I think it's my biggest strength, but also my biggest weakness. So, everything gets gone over with a fine-tooth comb, and we try not to miss anything. It's why I try to stay at a number between 25 and 28 horses, because I feel like if I got to 30 or 40 or 50, I would lose that going over them and making sure every little detail counts. So, the biggest thing is the weather's always tricky. You want to avoid any sickness or tying up issues, but all our horses are on a real good program. They go out in the field every morning, and we stick to a very tight routine, and barring anything stupid happening, we just try to babysit them along through the series and pray that nothing major happens that you can't overcome.
I've learned a lot in talking to people like you and in my many years in this business. But the one thing I'm only just starting to learn now, I think we all have OCD to some degree. And that's why we're here in a weird way. And that's the note we're ending on here for this conversation. Doug, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck in this first leg and throughout the whole series. We may be in touch depending on how things go.
Yeah, I sure hope so. But I'm glad I could talk to you for a little bit, and we'll see what happens.
That does it for this special episode of the Harness Players Podcast. We'd like to thank Jim Marohn Jr., Jason Bartlett, and Doug Dilloian Jr. for coming on to talk about their hopes in the MGM Borgata opening preliminary taking place at Yonkers Raceway on Monday, March the 30th. First race post time at Yonkers, 6:45 p.m. Eastern, 5:45 p.m. Central, 4:45 p.m. Mountain, so on and so forth. If you just watched this video, I encourage you to check out the analysis of the 5 divisions for the opening preliminary that I did alongside Mikey P here on the In the Money Media YouTube channel, or on the In the Money Media Network as a podcast. We'll have more coverage of the Borgata Series as it continues through its 5 preliminaries and into the finals on Friday, May the 8th, 1 week after the Kentucky Derby. This has been a production of In the Money Media. My name's Ray Cotolo, and as PTF says, sometimes I hope your photos come out well.